Hi, this is George with 573 Medicine, and in this video we're going to be going over the histology of muscle tissue. So a brief overview, there are four types of tissue which make up the human body: epithelium, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue, and in this video we're going to be focusing on muscle tissue. So a brief overview, there are three types of muscle in the human body. The first is skeletal muscle, and so skeletal muscle is the muscle which aids in voluntary movement. And something to appreciate in this image is that there are multiple nuclei, this blue substance, the nuclei, in the skeletal muscle cells, and these nuclei are located more peripherally. The second is cardiac muscle, and this is the tissue of the heart, and this contains a single centrally located nuclei. And the last is smooth muscle, and this is found in the walls of internal organs and is under involuntary control and has a single centrally located nuclei. So zooming into skeletal muscle is involved in voluntary movement, and it's typically attached to bones via tendons. And so tendons are fibrous connective tissue, dense fibrous connective tissue, which connects bones and muscles. So next, let's talk about the organization of skeletal muscle. So this is the bone, here is the tendon, here is the whole skeletal muscle. And so the muscle is organized into layers. So we have the muscles, the whole muscle, which is divided into fascicles, which is divided into muscle fibers, which is divided into myofibrils, which is divided into sarcomeres, which contain thick and thin filaments. Thick filaments are known as myosin, and thin filaments are known as actin. So something else to note is that these muscle fibers are the individual muscle cells, and the functional unit of contraction of these muscle cells are the sarcomeres, which contain these thick and thin filaments. Next, let's talk about connective tissue coverings. We have the epimysium, which is a connective tissue which covers the entire muscle. We have the perimysium. So the perimysium groups these fibers into fascicles. So the perimysium covers the fascicles. We can see right there. And a clinical correlate here is that in inflammatory diseases such as dermatomyositis, you'll find CD4 positive T cells in the perimysium. The next is the endomysium. So the endomysium covers the individual muscle fibers or muscle fiber cells. And a disease called polymyositis, you'll see CD8 positive T cells in the endomysium on biopsy. This is a picture of the myotendinous junction. So this is skeletal muscle, and this is the tendon, and we can see that the tendon is dense fibrous connective tissue. Now let's zoom in on the skeletal muscle. We have the epimysium, which covers the whole muscle, the perimysium, which covers the fascicles, and the endomysium, which covers individual muscle fibers or individual muscle cells. So here we have a closer view of skeletal muscle. And so this blue line right here is going to be an individual muscle cell or an individual muscle fiber. And we can also see these transverse or these longitudinal lines, and those are going to be called striations. And we can also see the multiple nuclei, which are located more on the periphery of these cells. So let's zoom in on what these striations and see what we have there. So inside of these striations, we have what is called the sarcomere. And the sarcomere, we have this electron microscopy picture, and then we have these labels underneath here. So a sarcomere is defined as the area from the Z line to the Z line. And something that can help you keep this in mind is that Z is at the end of the alphabet, like Z is at the end of the sarcomere. We also have what's called the I band. And so the I band contains only thin filaments. So thin filaments, also known as actin, are in red, and thick filaments are in blue. And so the letter I is a thin letter, so that helps you remember that it's for thin filaments. Next, we have the A band, which contains both thick and thin filaments. And A can help you remind you that all of the fibers are in the A band. The H zone contains only the thick filaments, and this is going to be heavy. So if it's thicker, it's heavier, so the H zone has the heavy filaments. And so sarcomeres are found in both skeletal and cardiac muscle, but they're much more abundant in skeletal muscle. So next we're going to shift gears and talk about the heart. So cardiac muscle is found in the heart, and there are fewer striations compared to skeletal muscle, and there's only a single nuclei, which is centrally located in each of the individual cardiac myocytes or cells of the cardiac tissue. And there are also these intercalated discs, which are a special type of gap junction, which allow the cardiac muscle to function as a syncytium. And the intercalated disc just has a different appearance than these other longitudinal fibers. They're just a little darker, a little pinker, a little darker, a little more purple rather. So next, to shift gears, let's talk about smooth muscle. So smooth muscle is going to be the muscle which lines the walls of hollow organs and are under involuntary control. So this is the general picture of the gut or the intestine. And so organs like the stomach, intestines, bladder, uterus, blood vessels, and respiratory tract are going to have smooth muscle. So this muscularis mucosa is going to be a prime example of smooth muscle, and we're going to zoom in there in a second. Additionally, smooth muscle is found in the skin, as well as the eye, in the ciliary muscle and the erector pili of the skin. So the ciliary muscle is responsible for changing the shape of the lens and controlling the iris, which is the colored part of your eye, and the erector pili of the skin is responsible for actually moving hair whenever you get cold. That's why your hair sticks up, is the contraction of the smooth muscle of the erector pili in the skin. So let's do a zoom up of the muscularis layer, muscularis mucosae layer of the intestine. And so we have these smooth muscle cells in the inner circular and the outer longitudinal smooth muscle layers. And they're sort of spindle-shaped cells, so also known as fusiform, and there's only one nuclei per cell. And there are no striations or intercalated discs. You can't see those longitudinal bands there. So these are two different examples of smooth muscles, so pay attention to what those might look like. So that's it for this video. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And feel free to email us anytime at realtalkmeded@gmail.com for any comments, questions, or concerns.